thinkers. In a perfect world, all of you would work for companies headed by CEOs and funded by investors who believe in and understand the power of a purposeful brand story. These enlightened individuals would echo Latny Connaught. You may remember her from episode 210 when she said, "There is no brand without demand." No, that's not what she said. She said, "There is no demand without brand." They would believe in Latny. They would give you the budget and resources to craft a compelling brand purpose that inspires employees, engages customers, motivates partners, and even attracts new customers. They would recognize that building a brand takes time and will pay off huge dividends in a year or more. But at the risk of bursting your bubble, it is not a perfect world. Not even close. It is a perfectly imperfect world, one measured in months and quarters, not years and decades. So, as much as I believe with all my heart that you marketers can change the world, that you marketers can help solve the world's biggest challenges, here's a bit of advice. Be patient, young Jedis. Before you can drive brand, you need to prove that you can drive demand. That's right. To earn a seat at the strategy table, you need to prove that you can put food on that table. Or to use more practical terms, if you want to be in your job long enough to have a shot at building an enduring brand, a purposeful brand, you need to show that you can drive pipeline, that you can put high quality leads into the hands of your salespeople. Don't bother fighting this truth. Embrace it. It's okay. You'll get your chance to change the world. Just build an epic demand generation engine first. With that bit of preaching behind us, we can now welcome our guest, Michael Collins, the CMO of the CFA Institute. If you're in money management or have money to be managed, perhaps you've heard of CFA, as in Chartered Financial Analysts. These are the folks that certify money managers in 170 countries around the world, a process of education and testing that can take years to complete. In this episode, Michael will share his journey to building a demand gen engine and how he has more recently turned his energy toward building the brand. Wow, Michael, welcome.
Hey, Drew, it's great to be here.
Thank you. So let's talk about you got to CFA in 2016. What was your initial mandate?
Well, in 2016, the organization, listening to, our customers who are the candidates who are taking the exam, and members, right? The CFAs, the Chartered Financial Analysts, who actually earn the charter that takes over 1,000 hours worth of study to do. Very kind of the world's kind of global gold standard in investment management. By listening to our customers, and just kind of brings me back to something an old boss said when I was a young Jedi, which was, keep your customers, front and center, and keep your competition in your peripheral vision. So always be focused on the customer. And so, speaking to our members, they were interested in us, building more brand awareness in the markets around the world, so that employers, if you're just earning this charter, this designation, employers would understand the difference between investment managers who had it, investment managers who had earned it, and those who didn't have it. And so that's what we set about to do at the beginning. So it was a little more indirect at the start, thinking about building pipeline, and was more around brand, helping effectively our local society chapters and our members, in their local markets. Now that, as you mentioned, very quickly evolved, and so we kind of have a saying again that I've used throughout my career, which is, you need to build sales overnight and your brand over time. And that's really back to putting the food on the table and showing that you can drive profitable revenue growth. And today, that's never been more important.
And I want to come back to the needs of the business, because that obviously, my preaching aside, that really does drive what you need to do. And if you had sufficient pipeline when you got there, then yeah, you could jump right to brand. And the other thing that's interesting is yours is a little bit different. In some ways, you're almost an ingredient brand in
That's
that,
correct.
right? And so ingredient brands have if you watch Intel, you think about some of these ingredient brands, you have to invest in that brand all the time, because if you don't, the value of someone putting that on their resume, putting it on their website, putting it on their business card diminishes, right? You have to keep putting equity into it. So it is a little bit of a different situation than some other brands. And again, I didn't say in my preaching, I didn't say it was right. I just said it was practical and what CMOs need to do. All right. Anyway, we can come back to brand. Let's start with, how did you sort of go about building a demand generation engine?
Sure. So, if you think about, we have, hundreds of thousands of people who sit for this, one of the three levels of the CFA program, every year. And so the organization did, in a way, very little direct to consumer demand generation when I arrived. They had moved on to doing demand generation through B2B partners, right? So through the large institutions, through the employers, ensuring that those talent leaders, those line of business leaders, understood the differentiation between someone with the charter and someone who didn't have the charter. To your point, right? That, the three letters CFA, that is the brand, right? The brand is the product. And so that's a little bit of a longer putt, right? If to use a golf analogy, right? That's a very long putt. And like you talked about at the beginning, right? That's months and years and decades, right? We've been around over 70 years, and people inside of financial services and investment management definitely understand the value of CFA program. So so we kind of were going down that route on a more of a B2B approach, right? So again, trying to drive top of mind awareness and unaided awareness and likelihood to recommend, et cetera. And as we got into the end of 2020 and early 2021, and with right around the time that we started to all realize what was happening with the global pandemic, we started to turn our attention back to driving a robust demand generation machine to consumers, right? So starting as early as juniors in university, all the way through, people are working. And that, as you know, is a very costly and complicated and not a one size fits all approach.
Yeah. I mean, how did you sort of, in this highly digital world, what were some of the things that you needed to do? Because here you can't go mass. You simply can't afford to reach all, 4 million students at that level. So, or maybe you could, but how did you sort of narrow your target initially?
Yeah, so we're big proponents of test and learn, right? So piloting things, I mean, in a really big way. And I'd have to say, and I'm an example we could talk about today, where there was one part of this effort that did not work and we needed to pivot, right? So we talk about the things and study the things that don't work as much as we celebrate the things that are working. So what we set out to do with a modest budget was to target half a dozen US cities, like major markets, and several markets outside the US, like Singapore and South Africa. And we selected those for a number of reasons based on the pool of potential candidates in those markets that have been robust for us in the past, that might have been experienced the steepest decline. And so there were a number of things we wanted to test and learn. And then we worked with WPP's Ogilvy as a global partner and a media partner, Neo. And so, we kind of, I wouldn't call it micro targeting, but we really focused in on a very targeted audience set in those markets. Everything digital, of course. And the biggest thing that we needed to do in terms of just not that it's a tip per se, but an encouragement to fellow marketers who are out there, or maybe folks who haven't done this before or are new to the CMO seat, I say is like, you really need to have supportive management to invest in analytics and to invest in getting the lead tracking set up all the way through the shopping cart. And Drew, I have to tell you, I learned a lot more, and my team learned a lot more about the intricacies of really doing this so that you can show your CEO, your CFO, and your board for sure that how you're really driving attribution, so that your efforts, are clear on what the investment is going to drive. And I'd have to say that's costs some money, because most people just want to jump in and like, let's do more creative, let's do more media. But boy, we had the support here, and it makes all the difference.
That's a perfect place. Let's take a quick break. And then when we come back, I do want to dive into the tech stack and what you did and what were some of the key findings as you went. So stay with us. Okay, we're back. And we've been talking about building demand and a demand generation engine that you can track and attribute. And this is a really tricky part, but a critical part of B2B marketers' lexicon today. I mean, they know, and they have agreement with this is what a lead looks like. This is how we track it. This is where it are, scoring systems, et cetera. So where did you start with this process?
We well, we started kind of at ground zero. We have all of the tech stack, tricks and tools, and we Salesforce, Marketo, and Sitecore for content engine, et cetera. But it's ensuring that you wire all those together in the right way to achieve what you're trying to do. And I have to say, a big part of this is our CIO and I are joined at the hip, so that certainly helps. And our CFO, I brought her, her into the mix right at the very, very beginning, and her team, in terms of financial planning and analysis, the people who are looking at, effectiveness of spend, not just in marketing, but across the enterprise, so that we could build a platform together that would allow us to attribute, every dollar we spent to either building a robust opt-in database, right? Or then conversion. And there's just any number of things you have to do to ensure that you're connecting all of these through. You can actually view through all the way through the cart. Now, I'm sure for a number of people listening or watching this, that you and I chatting about this, they're like, oh, we did a long time ago. But not every company has done that, because they may be in a more traditional. So I was talking about B2B sale. Some of those, right, 6 month, long cycles, year cycles, you can almost count them by hand, right? Because you can just go in and be like, hey, we have 320 deals in the pipeline. What gate are they at? You can almost do it by hand. You can't do it when you're looking at, hundreds of thousands of people, who you're reaching. So, I'd say that's our biggest. The biggest thing that we did was kind of revisit exactly how we needed to have the system stitched together.
And so I just wonder, because these days, I mean, it's not uncommon for a B2B CMO to have, a tech stack with 25 different things. And it feels like, can you get to sort of a really tight attribution model with those three?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We use NetSuite as, our shopping cart and financial engine, right? So, I mean, you got Salesforce, NetSuite, Marketo, Sitecore. There's a few other tools, but I think, what does our CIO say? He said, a lot of organizations are like Noah. They've got 2 of everything, right? Or 4 or 5 or 6 of everything. And I think it's always, especially in the larger enterprise, where you have the ability to trial and do different things. I think one of the things I see people do is they have a proliferation of technology that they only use an itty bit, just a teeny weeny bit of a lot of things, versus really zeroing in on what you really need to do the job, and then going deep, 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 deep on taking advantage of all that functionality, because frankly, it's all there. And I can tell you, I don't know if we want to get to this now or later, but I can tell you one place where this didn't work.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. Let's go there.
So this did not work in China the way we planned. So our pilot, in those, and that was in phase 2. So we did phase 1 of a pilot, was about 4.5 months. Totally blew away every target, and we set a lot of these targets for ourselves with insight from our agency partner Ogilvy and Neo, who have done this with, Fortune 10 brands, Fortune 100 brands, consumer brands, like best in class. So we said, listen, help us set what we should expect, because you don't know what you don't know. And so we blew away every metric and every measure in terms of efficiency, in terms of cost per opt-in, cost per close, right? So, for revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Database build, blew that away. Where we did not blow that away was in China. And there's a number of reasons for that, including, a lot of the rules change, in terms of like what the regulations are, right, that you need to keep an eye on, for sure. And secondly, data is such a big part of what we do. I mean, we don't do anything unless we can really understand the data. And that we have those analytics hooked up so we can use data to drive ongoing changes and, to the program, right? So to our media buys and other things, and keep what messages are working, what units are working, what channels. And because data really needs to be kept inside of China, right? There are really the platforms that we were using rest of world were just not as effective. And so through that research, switching over to using the 1X platform, doing WeChat advertising, other things on the Tencent platform. And that's really where we're headed. So like I said, we like to point out, of course, we're in marketing, right? So you want to be able to blow your horn, and celebrate the team and your team wins. But, as important is to be able to understand using data when you need to pivot and say, hey, listen, this isn't working. Let's try something different. And so by doing that and keeping the data, more contained and using some of these platforms, again, like WeChat, we're finding much, much bigger levels of success and are still able to measure, right, and monitor, our progress. So
yeah, no, that's definitely that makes a lot of sense, and China's different, and you just have to acknowledge it and embrace that. I'm curious, I love the fact that you've kept your tech stack relatively simple. Where, from a metrics that matter standpoint, can you narrow it down? Because opt-in is great in the sense that now you have a big juicy pipeline, but clearly not all of those folks are going to close. And so and obviously closing deals is a good one, but that's a lagging indicator, right? So as you're trying to get an assessment of what marketing is doing and what did you sort of learn to live by that really was a metric that mattered?
Well, certainly for us, there's a few. So cost per opt-in, besides the velocity of how fast we're growing that data, growing the pool, but cost per opt-in is a measure that we keep a pretty close eye on. Then we also look at opt-in quality, right? So we look at how fast those opt-ins close, right? Because you're going to age them out over time, and we kind of look at how long we want to be investing in retargeting and email marketing and reaching people via social channels proactively. It doesn't mean we give up on it, but you kind of want to know when you probably should stop investing in those. Of course, we look at cost per registration, right? Or like how much is every dollar of revenue costing us? Everybody does in marketing. But those are our key measures. And when I talk about opt-ins, I like to say we're building, a high quality pool of opt-in candidates, right? If you're coming to CFA Institute through one of our campaigns and you want to learn more about it, you're not confused when you give us your information, right? You don't think maybe you're going to win an iPhone, or maybe you think you're signing up to take by mistake, you're going to take the CPA exam to be an accountant, right? You're not confused. And we ask not for a lot of data, but we ask for enough data that then we can do, again, I'm sure many other marketers are doing. We use other third-party data sources to start to learn more about you, right? So all the other psychographic and demographic and, what you like to do, who are you, right? You're Drew, you're at the University of Michigan, right? So, we know that you probably consume ESPN online, right? That's where you're going to be hearing more from us. So I wouldn't say it's anything that's that's groundbreaking. I think it's more really focusing on the fundamentals that aren't always fun, right? They're not sexy, they're not glitzy, but they're the things that will really, I think, that have allowed us to break through and to drive what I think are some metrics that are just really phenomenal.
Right. So there's no, what's clear to me, and this is an important part of it, I think, to wrap a bow around, is in order to get them into your opt-in pool, there's no bait and switch. It's a clear conversation. We know you might be interested in this area. We might be able to help you, change your career or increase your revenue or your salary value. We may be able to do these things. If you want to learn more, let's chat. So you're not, again, this isn't sort of here's your coupon for a free trial of something. And so, because one of the things that's so tricky with cost per acquisition when it comes down to an email address is so often in B2B, that's a bad number.
Right.
Because it's an email address that somebody has given you, and it doesn't reflect any kind of pre-interest at all. It's just, you got them at a weak moment. They said, yeah, I'm interested in that white paper that you have on your website or that report, but they may not be a real true buyer. So it sounds like you're using your media and the content within that media as sort of a pre-qualifier.
Right. That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
So I think that's a really important insight. It's not get them to the website at any cost. It's get them to the website under the right premises, because you have value when they give you this information. What is the value exchange? What's their expectation?
Well, certainly, I mean, their expectation, I mean, it depends on where they are. So let's say that you're a rising senior at university. You're thinking about how you're going to stand out when you get a job. Now, remember, these aren't just people who work in investment management who one day will manage money. CFA program could be great for people who decide they want to go to work for an investment bank in technology, that they're going to be working on building financial systems that facilitate investment managers, right, to manage client money, right, to manage institutional money. So, part of this is lining up, which again is kind of fundamental, but is taking the time and use technology to serve it up to deliver the right compelling message to people. So we know based on how people will interact with us. For example, one of the lines we have is something like, the most important letters are not MBA, they're CFA, right? Because it's another way to go that we believe in many cases is a much more meaningful credential to have than having your MBA. And of course, in terms of value for money, right, it's a lot, it's a lot more valuable. So, and it's actually, frankly, a lot more rare, right, in terms of the number of people who start the program who actually make it through that over 1,000 hours worth of study in those 3 very difficult levels, kind of have this gold standard, right? It's sort of like this passport, around the world. We're all going to be talking about vaccine passports soon, right? We all the different private sectors working on various digital wallets and different ways to, besides, the little paper cards you get, when you get your COVID shot. But I mean, the same thing is true if you think about, how you're trusting someone with your money, and is it someone who's going to put your needs as an investor first? The CFA designation really stands for that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I hope you're right about the vaccine passport and the value. It's gotten to be a little crazy out there with some folks. Now, I'm curious on this, and as we wrap this up, is there a portion of this where you realize we're really on track? We've got this now, that this whole process of getting people into the proverbial funnel and then getting them through it, that we go, yeah, finally. How long did it take?
I mean, I would say to really be where we wanted to be, it took us about 8 months.
8 months. Okay.
Yeah. And that was with kind of 3 phases of expanding and evolving test and learns, right? Because you're not going to have every single thing hooked up, for example, all the way through the shopping cart. And you run into so many things. That's why you have to have great partners with your technology team and your CIO. You got to be a great partner with your CFO, and you have to have the support of your CEO and your leadership team. And we do, right? We got in our board. We have a fantastic, group of people who are really lined up behind this. Of course, whenever there's revenue attached to something, it's a little easier to get people lined up behind it. But again, it's got to be profitable revenue growth. So you got to be able to do it. And so just one example, we did not realize how difficult it would be to get all the tagging done correctly to really be able to, not only track people up to the cart and into the cart, but through the cart. And certainly you want to be able to take advantage and go retarget, remarket to them. But, it's not as easy as it's advertised on TV, right? So, and so I'd say that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I would give fellow marketers is you need to make sure that you've kind of sold this in as a multi-step effort and not a one and done, right? It's never going to happen one and done. I don't think if you're at General Motors or you're selling Tide, you're P&G, wherever you are, it's never a one and done. Of course, bigger companies, bigger budgets, more experience. Of course, they've got more of this stuff put together. But for many companies, you just, I think, I kind of said at the very beginning, hey, this is going to take us 9 to 12 months to have this running like a machine. And it took us about 8 months. But we didn't try to bite off the whole thing at once, right? We said, Let's do this part, let's learn, let's do this part. Oops, well, wait, why can't we track it from any here? Like we need to get all the way over. We need to be able to see who's come back, right? Who's, and so each time you learn a little something new and you get smarter and smarter. And I think it also is in terms of your internal culture and for your team, I think it's a great opportunity to allow them to have some wins, and then you kind of pull back and you do the next level and some more wins, because I don't think you get a lot of micro wins, right? And you also have some failures, right? And some snags versus trying to go after it in one big bite. It may or may not work.
Perfect. Love it. All right. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to switch back to brand and have a conversation about that. Okay. Stay with us. Hey, it's Drew. And I want to take a second to plug CMO Huddles. We launched this in 2020. CMO Huddles is an invitation-only subscription service that brings together an elite group of CMOs to share, care, and dare each other to greatness. We talk about some of the things like we're talking on this show. We talk about how you build a demand gen engine. We talk about how you build a brand. And it's funny, one CMO described Huddles as timely conversations with smart peers in a trusted environment, and another called them a cross between an executive workshop and a therapy session. If you're a B2B CMO that can share and care with the best of them, visit cmohuddles.com. Okay, we're back. Now let's sort of swing this around. And it's funny because you actually had a company that really truly understood the importance of brand. Then you built this demand generation engine. Where are you now with brand and how you're thinking about brand?
So that's a great question. And kind of to bring it back around to the thing I said at the beginning is, we really focus on building sales overnight and the brand over time. So what we're doing is, you see some of our brand imagery behind me on the backdrop here on the wall in the office. So what we've done is make sure we always have a consistent visual and verbal identity. When you look at something, that CFA Institute. When you hear something, a voiceover, that CFA Institute. We don't have a famous celebrity who does our voiceovers, but we use consistent same talent consistently, and then we provide assets that our local independent local member societies around the world can use in their local markets, whether it's at their events, whether it's at their meetups, whether it's at other networking type sessions that they do. Training sessions that they may be running, locally on behalf of members, so that they can extend those out into, nearly 170 local markets around the world where we are. So that's what we're doing, and I think the pendulum's always going to swing over periods, over business cycles, more on brand, less on demand. Okay, we got enough demand right now, oh my gosh, we got to get going on where's the demand machine, right? Where's the demand engine? Oh, we need leads, we need revenue. So, I think you just have to be flexible. And so, where we are right now though is definitely with a heavy emphasis on demand generation and revenue build.
So, a couple questions. You mentioned consistency. Obviously, I'm a believer in that. But why is consistency? Why does it matter?
Well, I think it matters. It's the bottom line is why it matters. So if you think about pressure on budgets, pressure on, we're not public, right? But pressure on publicly traded companies, or if you're private equity backed, pressure on, driving as much to the bottom line as you can to service debt and also go out and, expand. That's why I think consistency matters, right? Any agency would love to have you revisiting and rethinking your positioning line, your campaign creative, your corporate colors. Let's use the secondary palette this year. Oh, no, let's use the tertiary palette. That'll be a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for them because they're sending you the bill every month, right? So that's the other thing we really look at is, we have a great relationship with our agency partners around the world. We love them. We love working with them. I have to say though, we really focus also on that mix, that percentage mix of how much is working media, right, and how much is fee. And a big way that we do that is ensure that we're driving consistency. We don't need to throw out campaign creative if it's working. If it's not working, we're happy to throw a piece out and do something else. But I think that's, consistency. And the other one I like to say is discipline. We talk a lot here about global discipline and local freedom. And I would say that's probably the other reason why we've been really successful in these local markets is not one size fits all, right? I mean, we talked about, we had to do a pivot in China. How we were doing it everywhere else was not working. And so, I think being globally consistent, having the right discipline around, how you spend money, how you're thinking about your planning, and brand standards allows then your local offices, your field offices, your regions to have a pretty free hand, right? I mean, I ultimately am responsible for our brand and demand gen programs around the world, but I'm not every day, trying to steer the ship in China, right? The local team is doing that. They know their local market the best.
And you've given them parameters. So describe the brand. What's its purpose? Why does it exist?
Well, I mean, the brand, again, that's a great question, especially for CFA Institute, right? The brand, our charter holders are the brand, right? You think about, companies that sell or give away, brand swag. They've got their company store and you buy the golf shirt and you go, our people wear our brand every day on their business cards. They wear it on their resume, they wear it on LinkedIn, and we have people, charter holders are the manifestation of the brand of CFA, those three letters that stand for leading the profession, that stand for how we have our charter holders shaping the industry and holding up the highest level of standards in investment management. So for us, the brand is the product is the brand. And, we spend a lot of time and money on brand protection because at the end of the day, if those three letters became devalued, what would we have?
And it's interesting, a lot of brands want to build community because they know that a community will rally around them, will wear their brand. And you're by definition a community, right? Yeah. I mean, you are a tribe, and that tribe has a tattoo on it called CFA, which is fascinating. But I think a lot of brands wish they had it, right? And I think it's interesting. I think even though they have to go through a process and they get certified, and then you bestow this upon them, they earn this, the right to share the brand with you. There's still some behind the scenes, even though these people are the brand, you're sort of, you're defining it, right? I mean, there's got to be this give and take. Help me here. I've gone in two different directions at the same time. So one is when other companies talk about building community, do you just smile?
I do, because, this is, if you think about, communities of passionate members, passionate customers, passionate prospects, in this case, candidates, right, who haven't even earned the designation yet. I don't think you could buy the passion. Certainly I've been a marketer for, a while. So I'm not a young Jedi anymore. I'm the old Jedi. So, trying to do Jedi mind tricks on our customers. But but I have to say, like, the passion is amazing. If you look on kind of self-moderated on Reddit, tens of thousands of people who are forming their own communities, right, around CFA Institute, besides LinkedIn or actually our member community. So when you have several 100,000 people around the world who've earned the designation, and you have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who are sitting for these exams, and it's hard. It's really difficult. I mean, on purpose, right? Because this is hold out to be this gold standard, right? So you think about that community of people is something that other companies kind of only dream of, and it's something that we have, that we keep growing. So I think that is a big part of I would say, from a marketing point of view, our secret sauce, right? I mean, we talk about brand ambassadors, hundreds of thousands of people, word of mouth. Now that can cut both ways in terms of thinking about customer experience, right? Having the right experience, because if something isn't going right, that can hurt you the other way, right? So I mean, we really focus on our community of candidates and members for sure.
So as we approach the close here, it really is true. There is no brand. There is no demand without brand in your case, right? I mean, without CFA and those letters meaning something, there's no demand. No one would buy it. So, Ladney's right. So we're at a conundrum here, right? Now you arrived, it had a history, it already existed, it had its own momentum in the marketplace. I guess as other CMOs are listening to this thing, what are the sort of the biggest lessons that you think you could share with them in terms of your experience? I mean, it's such a unique scenario, but what's universal based on your experience, you think that would apply to other CMOs?
I think it's one key thing: focus on your customers. Create your brand promise, create your brand story, your narratives, your vision, how you go to market, right? Your identity. Focus on your customers. Your customers are going to tell you, right? And I think too many people start internally. They start with their agency. They start with these ideas, and then they take it out and say, "Oh, let's do some testing," right? Start with your customers. I've never gone wrong doing that, and we didn't go wrong here.
Interesting. Yeah, no, and it's got to be in your case, because if you think about every candidate who is coming into the system, they're probably only 1 degree of separation away from someone who has it.
That's right.
And it's not too hard to find out very quickly if there's a there. Very cool. All right. Well, we're going to focus on our customer, and whether we're talking about building brand or building demand, having those insights and bringing them to the table will make a big difference. All right. I think unless you had something else you wanted to say, we've covered a lot of ground. And I really appreciate you spending time with us today, Michael.
Hey, love doing it. No, I think we covered everything. And again, I love that we end the way we began, which is focusing on customers.
Focus on customers. All right. So Renegade Thinkers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neiser. Audio production is by Sam Beck. Show notes are written by Melissa Caffrey. The music is by the amazing Burns Twins. And intro voiceover is Linda Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, or learn more about quite possibly the best B2B marketing agency in New York City, visit renegade.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.